Utah State heads to SEC country. BYU starts conference play. And can Utah bounce back this week? Let's talk about it right here on the Red, Royal, and Blue podcast. Welcome into the Red, Royal, and Blue podcast, where we cover the Utah State Aggies, the BYU Cougars, and the Utah Utes. I'm your host, Tate Goodlow, and today we're going to be covering Week 5 of the college football season with my predictions and previews for the week. So, let's just get into Utah State right away. Utah State travels to Vanderbilt this week. Vanderbilt is 4-0 and 18th in the country. Led by Diego Pavia, who's having a pretty good year, 68 for 92, 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Bryson Barnes has had a good season so far. He's 70 for 107, 8 touchdowns, and 1 pick. So, Utah State is, with the matchup predictor on ESPN's website, they have a 5.5% chance of victory, and they are 22.5 point underdogs, which is better than their last SEC matchup. Their last SEC matchup against Texas A&M, they were 28 point underdogs, I believe. They covered that one. I think they only lost by 22, so this line is right where it should be, I think. Utah State, I think in this one, I think they have a better chance than they did against Texas A&M, but I don't think that their chance is very good still. Vanderbilt, they're a bottom dweller in the SEC usually, but this year, they're 4-0. They got, returning quarterback. They've returned a lot of production. And they did beat number 11 South Carolina 31-7. They were 11 at the time. Now they're unranked. But they took it to South Carolina at South Carolina at that. They also went into Virginia Tech and won 44-20. Looking back on it now, it's not that great of a win, considering that Virginia Tech is yet to win a game, and they no longer have a head coach. But you look at this Vanderbilt team, and they're not surrendering many points. Against Charleston, they won 45-3. Virginia Tech, they won 44-20. South Carolina, 31-7, and then Georgia State, 70-21. So they score. They score a lot of points. I think Utah State is going to struggle again. And we talk about this pretty much every week with Utah State, but I think their offensive line is going to have some problems with Vanderbilt. I don't think Bryson Barnes is going to be able to have much time in the pocket because this offensive line for Utah State just does not protect the quarterback. It's not good. Let's see. Vanderbilt has 11 sacks on the year in their 4 games so far. And Utah State, let's see how many they've given up. Utah State, they are so prone to sacks. It feels like they've given up 6 a game. At least through weeks 1 and 2, I know it was 6 a game. Let's see here. Utah State has surrendered. Utah State has surrendered 16 sacks. 16 sacks in 4 games. So they are averaging 4 sacks per game. And that's not going to be good enough against a ranked opponent. Bryson Barnes is going to really struggle, I think, in this game just because he's not going to have the time. The run game is going to be very important to, keep Vanderbilt on their toes. Miles Davis leads the rushing this year, 44 carries for 310 yards. He's averaging 7 yards a carry, and he only scored 2 touchdowns though. I think Bryson Barnes is scoring the majority of the touchdowns down in the red zone, as he has 59 carries for 197 yards and 6 touchdowns. So Utah State is definitely going to need to run the ball effectively if they want any chance in this game, but I don't really think that there's much of a chance if we're being honest. Um, yeah, this game's a 10:45 kick Utah time, so you're gonna have to be up early. Not early, but it's gonna be the morning slate. It's always fun to kick off the college football Saturday with an in-state game. So, yeah, I think Utah State's going to really struggle. I think I would expect Vanderbilt to have 3-4 sacks probably in this one, and I don't see Utah State moving the ball super effectively. We saw it against Texas A&M, and I think we're going to see a lot of the same in this one. Moving on to Utah versus West Virginia. Utah has to travel to Morgantown in this one, across the 2 time zones, which is never easy. But Utah is the favorite by a good margin. They're 12.5-point favorites in this one. It opened at 9.5, and it just keeps moving up. I think that's probably a pretty good line. I could see Utah having a slow start to this one as well, kind of like we saw in the Wyoming game. And I think it's going to be the opposite of what we saw this past week against Texas Tech. I think Utah is probably going to start pretty slow in the first half. And then like the Wyoming game, though, I would expect them to blow it open in the second half, going to halftime, and Whittingham will rile them up, and they'll come out and score some more points in the second half. I don't think the defense is going to have any problem with West Virginia at all. Nico Marchiol for West Virginia, 66 of 98, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. So that's not a good touchdown to pick ratio. Their leading rusher is Edwards with 141 rushing yards. Let's see. So West Virginia is coming off of a painful loss at Kansas, 41-10. And Utah's coming off of a painful loss, 34-10 at home versus Texas Tech. Both teams are going to want this win. They're going to be hungry, as every team is coming off a loss. But I don't think that Utah should have too many issues. This West Virginia team is not great, to be honest. Let's see. Yeah. West Virginia has rushed for 821 yards on the year. I think Utah's defense is going to have no problem against this West Virginia offense. West Virginia is averaging exactly 24 points a game. 12 touchdowns. They've had 12 touchdowns. They average 205 rushing yards a game. That's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And then they average 7 yards per pass attempt, and then they average 203 passing yards a game. So all around, they're going to average about 400 yards of total offense. That's not very good. Compared to what Utah saw against Texas Tech. I don't think that Utah is going to have much of an issue stopping this team. They're 15 for 56 on third down. West Virginia is. That is horrendous. That is a horrendous third down rate. You have to be able to convert third downs. We talked about this. We've talked about this on this podcast before. Third downs are so crucial. If you can't move the chains, it's not gonna be a good day for you. And we saw it in the Utah game last week with Texas Tech, the opposite. They were moving the chains pretty much every 2 downs, it felt like, especially in that fourth quarter. Um, Utah wanted to get off the field, and they couldn't. Texas Tech kept moving the chains, and that's what happens when you move the chains and you keep the ball out of the other team's hands. There's not really much that you can do, that the opponent can do against you. So Utah is averaging 36.8 points per game. They're 36 of 58 on third down, and 3 for 5 on fourth down. So they are much better on late downs than West Virginia is. I don't think that there's going to be much resistance from this West Virginia team. I think that Utah's going to be just fine. Utah's averaging 450 yards per game, averaging 242 rushing yards, which is a little bit low for Utah's standards. They're a run heavy team, and they are usually pretty good at it, and they're averaging about 210 passing yards. But I would predict Utah to probably, I would expect them to start the game a little bit slow. It's a 1:30 Utah time kick. So what would that be? 3:30 in West Virginia. They are flying out when I'm recording this tomorrow, which is Thursday. So they'll get that extra day to acclimatize to the time and get ready to go. But I don't think Utah's going to struggle handling the Mountaineers of West Virginia. I think this one's going to be a win for Utah. And bumping up to 4-1, I think that probably puts them right back in the top 25, following their drop after last week. Moving on to the final game of the weekend, we have BYU taking on Colorado in Colorado. So this is an 8:15 Utah time kick. BYU is ranked 25th in the country, following their win against East Carolina. Now, BYU is a 6.5 point favorite, and a lot of people are thinking this is going to be a pretty close game. I don't necessarily agree. I think these teams are very similar to what they were last year. LJ Martin is back, Chase Roberts is back, a lot of the defense is back. Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker. Guys like that, Tommy Prasis, and I think this game might turn out a lot like what we saw last year. And a lot of people, analysts and things like that, are pointing to Bear Bachmeier that he might make this game a lot closer than last year. He's a true freshman, all these things. But last year, if you look at the game last year, Jake Retzloff did not have a good game against Colorado. He went 12 for 21 with 2 picks, no touchdowns. So I mean, as long as Bear Bachmeier can be serviceable, he doesn't need to be outstanding to beat this Colorado team. As I said, Jake Retzloff last year, 12 for 21, 151 yards, 2 picks, a QBR of 30.8. And he only rushed for 29 yards on 7 attempts. I don't think that Bear Bachmeier has to do anything insane to beat this Colorado team. I think that if LJ Martin gets the ball, and Sione Moa as well, if they run the ball effectively, I think that BYU is going to have no issue in this one. The final last year, by the way, was 36-14. A lot of those Colorado points coming in garbage time. Second stringers were in the game for the BYU Cougars. But, you talk about Caden Salter and how good he is. Is he better than Shedeur was last year? Because this BYU defense shut Shedeur down. 16 for 23, 208, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, QBR of 18.6. The rushing yards in last year's game, this is probably the most insane stat of all of last year. Colorado, 2 rushing yards, averaging 0.1 yard per rush on 19 carries. The longest run, 11 yards. So I don't think BYU is going to have a problem. I think that their defense is just as good as it was last year, if not better, especially at stopping the run. BYU is amazing at stopping the run. This is a team that going into the East Carolina game and halfway through the East Carolina game, their defense was scoring more points than it was allowing. Um, they've given up, what is it, 16 points this year, I believe. So I don't think that Colorado has the talent, especially on offense, to move the ball. This is a Colorado team that's played 3 quarterbacks this year, and Caden Salter's already been benched once for a true freshman third string quarterback. So, he's 48 for 72 on the year with 4 touchdowns. He also leads the rushing with 153. But, BYU's rusher is LJ Martin with 342. So he's over double what Colorado's leading rusher is. And I think that BYU's defensive line as well is going to put a lot of stress on Caden Salter. And I would expect big things from this BYU defense. I'd expect BYU to win the turnover battle. And I think another thing with Bear Bachmeier too is he's yet to turn the ball over. He has not turned the ball over in his 3 starts, and that is the most important stat for a young quarterback. Is to keep the ball safe. If you keep the ball in your team's hands, especially with a defense like the Cougars have, BYU's defense is going to force turnovers. They're going to get you the ball back, and if you keep the ball out of harm's way and you guarantee points for your team, you're going to do just fine. BYU already has 7 sacks on the year, and they have only allowed 3 sacks. So I really don't see BYU struggling too much with this one, but I could be wrong. Obviously, BYU is 4 passing touchdowns, only 4 passing touchdowns on the year, but with the rushing game as well, you don't really have to throw the ball a whole lot for BYU to be successful. 4 touchdowns, 0 picks. They have 797 rushing yards on the year and 559 passing yards. And then Will Ferrin is nails for this BYU team. He's 8 for 8 on field goals with a long of 56, and he hasn't missed an extra point either. So I don't see BYU struggling. I think all 3 phases of the game, they're solid. I think offensively, they're not going to turn the ball over. They're going to run the ball down your throat. They're about 60-40 this year, rush to pass. So be ready for a heavy dose of the run, and just keep the ball safe. They have had some fumbling issues, especially with Parker Kingston. He has fumbled quite. He's fumbled on 2 punts this year, but I would expect BYU to not struggle with Colorado, move to 4-0, and start moving up those polls. That's all for the preview this week. Let's head to score predictions. All right, it's time for score predictions for this week in the state of Utah. We will start with Utah State going to Vanderbilt. I do not think that Utah State is going to score many points in this one. I think Bryson Barnes is going to be under a lot of pressure. I think he's going to get sacked a few times, and I don't think Utah State's going to be in this game for long. I think Vanderbilt's a very good team. I think they score a lot of points, and I don't think Utah State's defense will be able to slow them down nearly as much as they need them to. I'm going to go on this one. I'm going to go Vanderbilt. I'm going to go Vanderbilt 38. Vanderbilt 38, Utah State 10. That puts Vanderbilt covering the spread of 22.5. I don't think that Utah State's going to be able to slow down this SEC squad, number 18 in the country, Vanderbilt. Moving on to Utah. Utah going to Morgantown. Like I said in the preview, I think this game might look a lot like the Wyoming game for Utah. I think they're probably going to have a slow first half, but I think they're probably going to break it open in the second half. This is a Utah team that hasn't surrendered more than 10 points in a game, or I'm sorry, they gave up 34 to Texas Tech, but prior to that, they gave up 10, 9, and 6, and I don't think it's going to be any different in this one. I'd expect a slow start, but I think Utah turns around in the second half. I'm going to go 28-7. 28-7 Utah. I think the first half probably might end 7-7, maybe 14-7. But Utah pulls away in the second half. 28-7 Utah. Moving into the final game of the week, we have BYU going to Colorado in Boulder. As I said, I think this game is going to turn into a lot like what it was last year. I don't think Colorado is going to move the ball. I don't think that the Colorado is going to be able to slow down the run game. The 2 games they've lost when they've surrendered over 200 rushing yards, that's been the key to success. And BYU is definitely going to run for over 200 yards on Colorado. I am going to put this game. I'm going to put it at BYU. We go BYU 24, Colorado 14. BYU wins by 10. They're not going to put up as many points as they did last year, where they won 36-14, but I don't think they're going to give up many points at all. So 24-14 for BYU. Those are my score predictions for this week. And with that, let's head to the outro. All right. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of the Red, Royal, and Blue podcast. You can find this show on YouTube and Spotify at the Red, Royal, and Blue podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notifications, and we'll see you next time.